Good evening and welcome to Legal Tech Live, episode 51. I'm here with Matt Volm of TALI, or as I first learned about them, TALI the Beaver, because the beaver stuck in my mind from the very beginning. And Matt he is in a very unique position for Legal Tech Live guests. In 51 episodes, Matt is telling us about winding down a startup. This is very unique. We don't get a lot of these guests. We do appreciate these guests because the feedback for those who come in and tell us about some of the difficulties with the startup and when it just doesn't work out, that they have decided to shut down. A lot of people get a lot of good information about this. So Matt, welcome to the show. I appreciate your willingness to come on, share this story, help other startup entrepreneurs in their journey in legal technology. And tell us, what happened, what it was like, what happened, and where you're off to next. But Matt, before we get there, give us a little background about yourself, because you are not a lawyer and you got into legal tech.
Yeah, for sure. Hello everyone, and thanks for having me, Nick. It's good to be here. Yes, I'm not a lawyer. I actually did my undergrad in accounting and finance and went to business school for graduate school. But I am, whether fortunately or unfortunately, married to an attorney who has been practicing civil litigation for the last 8 years or so. And that's actually where I saw this problem around timekeeping within the legal profession, and why I thought that might be a problem worth solving, and kind of actually how I came up with the idea for TALI, and ultimately what led me to kind of jump into legal technology as an entrepreneur.
All right. So you watched some of and tell us, TALI, I think it's a very simple product, but just tell us in a few quick words what TALI did.
Yeah, so at TALI, we were building a time and billing solution for attorneys that was powered by voice technology like Amazon Alexa and Google Assistant. So we would let you log and track your time using simple voice commands. So you could say things like, Echo, tell TALI to log 12 minutes to the Jim Smith divorce matter. And TALI would come back and she'd say, okay, great, what is it that you did? At which point you could give your activity description, something like, phone call with client regarding upcoming mediation. And we would take that information, turn it into a time entry for you that you could then sync directly to your invoicing or billing system. So you would never have to manually log or track your time again. We would automate that whole process for you. And so the value that we were delivering to our users was eliminating the pain and the time it takes to manually track and enter your time, and hopefully in the process actually capture more of the billable time that you're spending throughout your day.
Excellent. And this was voice activated, so you could use Alexa, Cortana, any others that you could use to track.
Yep. So we had we had Amazon Alexa and Google Assistant capabilities live and in production, and we had Microsoft Cortana and Siri in development and in beta. So we were out there and existing on some platforms and kind of developing on some others.
All right. Excellent. And I mean, it's such a great idea for a tool that's so helpful, because, hey, I'm working on this. I don't want to stop and go and track the time in one of this old school style billing. I used to, when I worked in a firm, had to actually write it back in the day, hand write the time. We've come a distance from that, but it would have been the kind of tool that I would have wanted to eliminate that task. Yeah. And so tell us, what was your adoption like? Was you started, you guys had some good success, got some good investments, and what was user adoption like?
Yeah, so we started the company in February, March of 2017, and we released our first beta product in September of that year. So it took us about 6 months. During that 6 month period, myself and my two co-founders, who are all named Matt, by the way, so three Matts.
The three Matts.
So during that first 6 months, we all actually had day jobs at the time too. So it was just nights and weekends of us kind of building this thing. And we launched our beta product at ClioCon, and that was really our first end-to-end solution where you could use Amazon Alexa to log or track your time. You could see what Tally captured for you within our web application at telltally.com, and you could then sync that information directly to Clio with the click of a button. So never having to fill out a time entry form again. And we had a lot of really great, You
won like $100,000 or something at ClioCon.
Yeah, so that was at the launch code contest last year. Yep. Okay. So that was great. And so the year before that was in 2017. That's when we launched our beta product, and we had a lot of really great feedback and a lot of excitement around what we were doing at Clio. I think part of it was, the problem we were solving and the ease of the solution that we were building. I think people also loved the beaver and the brand.
Stuck in my mind.
Yep, exactly. And it's hard to forget a team of three guys named Matt. And so we had a lot of really great excitement early on. But after we launched, we had, like any startup, plenty of challenges around just product and engineering and sales and marketing and all that stuff. And so we were really hyper-focused on delivering value to our users and making sure that they were engaged and using the solution. And that was really our focus throughout 2018. So we tracked all that stuff. We knew how many activities or time entries people were recording, how many active users we had a day, a week, a month. And we experimented and we iterated a ton to see if there was anything that we could do to move the needle on our active users. So we really wanted more people to actively use the product.
Right.
And we wanted them to engage very frequently with the solution, right? You should be logging and tracking your time multiple times a day. But we never really kind of crossed that chasm, or I guess kind of cracked that nut. Throughout 2018, despite us doing as much as we could, we never had more than 240, 250 paid users in total, which for us was about $3,000 of MRR. Right. And we only had our peak was typically around 20-ish daily active users. So, we didn't have more than really 10% of our paid user base using the solution a whole lot, or at least on a regular basis. And then over the course of a week, our active users would typically record 12 time entries with Tally. So anywhere between 2 and 3 a day. And despite everything we did to try to move those, move the needle on those metrics, we never were able to kind of do that. And so that was where we were by the end of 2018. Over the course of the year, we were fortunate enough to raise nearly, $1 million of kind of pre-seed funding from a variety of individual angel investors and early stage, VC firms as well. So we had a lot of really great people kind of on the team, helping, mentoring, providing advice and feedback. When we got to early 2019, we were kind of faced with that dilemma of, we're running low on cash and we've got these metrics that haven't really been improving. And so those are some of the challenges that we faced kind of going into the end of the year, and ultimately, what led us to kind of look at winding down.
Right. Okay. So you covered so much stuff there that a lot of people need to know. A lot of startups, a lot of those who are looking to go in there. Interesting that For one, MRR is monthly recurring revenue. Not everybody who's thinking about going into the startup realizes that. Two, you were getting about 10% of your paid users using it on a daily basis. Can you delve into that at all and tell us why you think that may have been?
Yeah.
Some,
So I
some of
think
the issues that you may have identified.
Yeah, so whenever I talk to people about winding down Tally, I think there's two main things that I bring up that we ran into, and really what it comes down to is we ran out of cash before we found product market fit.
Okay.
And one of the challenges we faced was on the product side, the other was on the market side. But on the product side is kind of what you're referring to, and in looking at it, I think we faced a couple of challenges. One was outside of our control. And I think it was just where the technology is today is not quite where it needs to be to fulfill the needs of an enterprise grade B2B technology solution.
Okay.
Right. The expectation that people had in their heads of what Tally would be able to do is that they would be able to tell Tally this thing that they did, use shorthand and whatever abbreviations they might have, and that Tally would understand that and turn it into a time entry form.
Okay.
And that is just not where these voice platforms are today.
They expected more conversation. It would pick up a longer conversational, like I'm logging the entire task as though it was a straight voice recording.
Yeah, so there were problems with dictation, right? Like how would on our end we called them slots. So it was how would Tally recognize the difference between a client name or a matter name and say an activity description and the amount of time that you wanted to record. That may seem pretty simple, but it's actually really hard to figure out how you build something to differentiate between that, and then to understand that there's essentially an infinite amount of ways that you could piece those things together, and we have to do the same job at the end, which is turn that into a time entry form for you. And I think so one element of that is just the technology wasn't quite there where, at least for us, a small team that needed to move quickly, we weren't able to quite get there with the technology that was available. But the other part was just on us, right? It was we weren't able to build a product that met the expectations of our users, and I think it came down to the ability to be seamless and frictionless. So the beauty of voice is that it eliminates the screen, right? You don't need to log in, you don't need to type, you don't have to click and do drop downs and all this stuff. But because of the technology not being quite there yet, we still had to rely on our users going to telltally.com, reviewing all of their time entries, cleaning them up if they needed to, and then sending them off to Clio or Practice Panther or Rocket Matter, one of our other integration partners. With that, people started to question kind of how much value they were getting out of it versus their old way.
Okay.
And
then
it was
a little too time consuming, a little too much time being used on the administrative side.
Yeah, so it's it was how much time am I spending actually at my keyboard still kind of cleaning up time entries versus just creating them from scratch.
Okay.
And then the other thing on the product side was this year in 2019 we had plans to kind of expand our solution. So up until this point we were 100% focused on timekeeping, and we relied on our integration partners like Clio and Rocket Matter and Practice Panther to do invoicing and reporting and payments. And so I think one of the things we wanted to do this year, but we just again ran out of time, was we wanted to build our own invoicing and reporting and payments capabilities, so that if you wanted to use Tally for everything time and billing related, you could. And I think if we would have had that more kind of robust and horizontal type of solution, that the product could have been stickier, it could have provided value to our users in more ways than just time. And so that was one other piece. And then the last thing I'll mention on the product side was, which is something that any voice companies will, or voice technology companies will run into, which is, Tally was an invisible agent, right? She was like a thing that existed because you knew that she existed, right? But if, you didn't see her on your screen, you didn't get like a notification from her. She was really just there and ready to like do her job whenever you told her. And so the conversation was kind of reliant on you to engage and use. And we never found a good way to make that kind of bi-directional and make it a two-way conversation, which could have been another thing that would have helped us on the engagement side.
Okay. So when you say the bi-directional thing that you think was problematic, did you want her to be communicating with them to remind the attorney that, hey, by the way, you should go ahead and note your time on this task? Did you want some of that, like prompts for the attorneys?
Yeah, so it's the fine balance that every technology company plays, which is how do you engage enough but don't cross the line of annoyance, right? So you don't want to send constant emails or send constant text messages, or for us, right, if your voice through the through your Echo device or your smart speaker, you don't want to constantly be showing up, because if you do it too much, then people are going to get annoyed and just turn you off altogether. And so it's that balancing act of like, where's that sweet spot in the middle?
Right.
And that was, again, something that we weren't able to find. And we were looking at doing it through a couple of different channels. Like we wanted to engage with our users, remind them to track their time, give them insights on their time. And we wanted to do that through whatever channel made the most sense, right? Whether it was via voice through your Amazon Echo, whether it was via email, via text message, through Slack, right? Whatever it would be, we did want to surface that information to you, but we didn't want to do it in a way that would be annoying. We wanted to make sure it was valuable and impactful.
Right.
And again, that's what I was kind of getting at with the bi-directional piece, and it was something we just weren't able to hit on.
Right. Yeah, it is. It almost goes back there. It reminds me of the early Microsoft Word days where Clippy would show up in the corner, right? And it was really annoying. You have to, there has to be a balance there between, how many emails are too many emails, how many prompts are too many prompts, but how do we also get you to continue using this? So, so that's interesting that you guys had that issue. And I do feel like as much as people are getting used to the voice assistants in their homes and in their employment, it still seems to me to be I don't know what the numbers are on the adoption rates of this, but lawyers are, I feel, a bit of a difficult sell on this technology, right? Because, all right, well, now who's listening to my conversations if I have the Alexa in my office? Who's listening to my conversations with my clients? Did you notice any difficulty selling this idea to attorneys based on attorney-client privilege or something like that?
Yeah, so that was, and that's exactly, where I brought up the challenges we faced on the product side before. On the market side of our issue, that was, definitely one of the things we faced, which was, attorneys are trained to mitigate and identify risk, right? And, they're not your traditional early adopters that love bleeding, cutting edge technology. So that was certainly a challenge for us. When we first got started, the privacy and this whole like listening device thing, seemed like if that was all some people wanted to talk about, right? Especially some folks at bigger firms. But by 2018, those, I guess, concerns essentially went away. And even some of the bigger firms we were talking to were fine with, the fact that there is Alexa for Business, that it's got enterprise-grade security and compliance and data governance, that there's Microsoft Cortana, which gets deployed through your Microsoft for Business team. So they all got comfortable with that. And from there was all questions around like adoption and everything like that. But but yeah, we definitely ran into people asking us like, you must think I'm crazy that I'm going to put like a smart speaker that has a microphone in my office. And it's like, well, no, because I don't think you're crazy, because if that's the case, you're already crazy, because if you have your mobile phone
Right.
in your office, you have a device with a microphone that could be listening to you. And if it's an iPhone and you got Siri enabled, it is.
Right.
And it's the same thing for your iPad. That's the same thing for your MacBook. If you have a Windows 10 machine and up and Cortana is enabled, like, so anyone who thinks that having an Amazon Echo device in their office is going to add extra risk, if they want to eliminate that risk, they literally need to get rid of all technology that they're using in their
Yeah.
office. Their computer needs to go away. Their phone needs to go away. They can't let anyone in there that's wearing, an Apple Watch, right? Like, these are all the things that you need to do. And that was what we try to tell people, was like, was to educate them on what these devices actually did, which is they are no different than the mobile device that you're carrying around in your pocket right now.
Right.
And that mobile device is actually collecting a lot more data on you than these smart speakers ever will.
Right.
And so those are just some of the things that we would go.
It's an interesting juxtaposition, though, isn't it? It's almost a messaging thing on the technology itself. One I think of as, this is my smartphone. And on the other, I think of it as a listening device.
Yeah.
When they're accomplishing much of the same thing, but the way that people adapt to it, thinking, well, I don't want this listening device in, and as you said, it's already there,
Yeah.
And so I wonder how that played out. That was a little bit more for my
And it
own.
will, and it will, the same way that when smartphones came out and people had Google Maps and all these things, and there were concerns around like, well, isn't my phone tracking everywhere that I go, and like, who's collecting that data, and what are they doing with that, and I don't know if I want to give access to all that. Like, the answer to all those things is that, like, they are, like, your phone, and you have all the apps that are on there that you give access to your location. They know everywhere that you go, but
Yep.
the trade-off is that, like, we don't care about that because we get so much value from them.
Right.
That's the thing with smart speakers that will happen, and will happen very quickly, which is people are going to stop being worried about those things because they're going to get so much value, both as a consumer but also as a professional, from the devices and from the technology themselves. And I think that's something that will only come with time. I don't think it's going to take a lot of time, but I think that's the trade-off, is that once people realize how much value they're getting and how much that outweighs any of these, call them trivial concerns around kind of security and privacy and things like that, people will start to really adopt technology.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about how much was raised and what your burn rate was like with TALI?
Yeah, so we raised almost $1 million, I think, and our we were burning anywhere between like 30 to 40K a month between the team and sales and marketing experiments and technology and all that stuff. And so that's where, and we had some contractors helping us out. And, I think we were really lean as a team, and essentially all the engineering was done by my two co-founders. So I'm the non-technical person.
Mm-hmm.
I did all the business stuff. And then we relied on some contractors to help us out there. In terms of kind of raising money and spending money, there's actually not a whole lot there that I would have changed.
Okay.
The things that we did right from a fundraising perspective was that we made sure that we raised from the right people, and that they were people that we truly wanted to go through our startup journey with.
Okay.
We had one investor in particular that wanted to give us money, but the guy didn't have a good reputation. I didn't like him, and so we ultimately just said, like, thanks for your interest, but like, no, we're gonna pass. And I'm so glad I did.
Oh,
And
good.
that was the advice that I heard from everyone else. And it was, it's those types of things where we passed because not because we didn't need the money, like we always needed money.
Sure, sure.
But the on the investor side, it was making sure that you've got the right people on your team because I mean, you can't divorce these people, right? Like
Right,
once you take their check and the money's in the bank, like they're not going to go away.
right,
You got to look at them like you're, an early hire.
right.
Yeah, and then on the spending side, I think the one thing there, we tried to run a lot of sales and marketing experiments to see what worked. But the problem was that even if we would have found the right channel, we didn't have product market fit. And so we didn't have a product that would have met the needs of any users we could have acquired through those channels. So while we ran a bunch of experiments and I knew what our customer acquisition costs would have been through, Facebook ads versus Google AdWords versus outbound sales with SDR,
Hmm.
we didn't have a product that would have been able to serve the needs of any users we would have gotten on board.
Okay.
Um, so that was I guess that's one thing that I do think back of is you want to run those experiments when the time is right, but you definitely don't want to throw a lot of money at them early on because they won't really tell you anything.
Sure.
So
Okay. And I feel like that's a pretty reasonable analysis. Were the founders also, were you guys being paid or you were taking salaries or whatever through this?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So all the founders we were all in our 30s and 40s. Let's see, between the three of us, we have 7 kids and 4 dogs and a couple mortgages and a lot
Right.
of
So
things.
you couldn't do it with no pay.
Yeah, exactly. So we were not, and none of us were independently wealthy or
Right.
anything like that. And so yeah, we were in a position where like the only way that we would have been able to start a company is if we would have raised money and paid what we needed to pay ourselves to
Right.
keep our bills covered and nothing more.
Okay. That's, I mean, this is what people need to know about when you're going in a startup. When you're in a startup at 20 years old with no homes, no mortgages, no kids, no mouths to feed, it's a different story, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you can sleep on your friend's couch and eat breakfast cereal every meal, and your burn rate can be pretty low.
Pretty low. Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, once multiple daycare bills and mortgages and student loan payments later, you've got more obligations
You've
than
got more obligations. So the only way you can do a startup in that situation is you have to take a salary.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I think the thing with that too is like that, and that's the other thing that I learned is like there's no need to like glorify, like I'll say glorify like that type of startup grind. Like, don't get me wrong, like we certainly didn't have it easy. And it was super hard, but I think the trade-off you need to make there is, it's going to be stressful enough trying to build a company from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to ask yourself, do you want the added stress of literally falling behind on your bills and having student loan companies or your mortgage like people calling you and like trying to collect and do you want that added stress to perform? For us, that would have degraded any value that we could have built within the company. And so we made sure that for us and for the team that at least those things were covered.
Yeah.
That we weren't making any extra money where we could go out and buy ourselves Teslas or anything like
Right.
that.
Right.
But we also were not completely starving ourselves, and that had zero impact on the level of effort and how much hustle and effort went into trying to build it. And so yeah, that's the other thing is like there's no one way to build a startup, to build a successful startup, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to like sell all of your worldly goods and live in your car. That might be an option, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not the option for everyone. And you don't need to necessarily like grind it out like that. But either way, it's going to be super hard, super challenging, but super rewarding. And that's the main give and take, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's important to hear that. It's there isn't just one way. I've known people who've started companies a variety of different ways, and certainly there's certainly some ease if you're coming at it with some independent wealth.
Yeah.
Right? There's certain ease there. If you're not coming at it with that, there's a couple of other ways. Doesn't mean you can't build a successful company.
Yep, that's right.
Is there like one or two things you did talk about on some of the sales and marketing spend? You may have done a few things different there, but that doesn't sound like it would have. It sounds like it would have prolonged the inevitable based on the product, some of the product issues. Would you do this company again in 18 months? Do you think the technology would be there then? Is there any way you'd go back maybe with a change of one or two things and do that again?
So I think in 3 to 5 years that something like TALI will exist.
Okay.
I think at that point the technology will be there, and there will be other examples of successful voice first companies within the enterprise and other verticals doing solving other problems. So I do think that it will exist. It's not going to be built by us. But whoever does build it, I'll be really happy for them. And glad that I'll be able to say at least that, we gave it a shot early on and hopefully helped provide them that opportunity to make it successful. Timekeeping is a big problem for, a lot of industries. So I think it's got the potential to be a big business. But again, like us, you got to start with a focused approach. So, it's going to be someone who's trying to solve that problem for lawyers that will then be able to solve that problem for accountants and consultants and freelancers and kind of move step by step as opposed to just trying to build some real big, meaty, horizontal type product for everyone.
Right.
So yeah, I do think it will exist. I think 3 to 5 years we'll look back, someone will have it built, it'll do what it needs to do to be successful. And that it'll be a good business at that point.
Excellent. That's great. And what do you see yourself doing upcoming now? I remember seeing the LinkedIn post saying anybody need a former CEO, which I thought was. I got to tell you, the way that you've handled it, and was this your first startup?
Yeah,
it was. The way you've handled it, and maybe this comes with being a little bit older and having kids and having that stuff, the way you came across, because I've heard about people being crushed when the startup failed, but that LinkedIn post is really what made me reach out, because it seemed like, well, here's a guy who's got a really good personality, not personality, but it felt so real. Like, this is what happened. It's over. Sorry, and we're moving on. And you were just very positive about the whole thing, I guess, was my experience. And that's what made me feel comfortable enough to reach out and say, hey, would you come on the show and talk to us about this? Because a lot of people, I wouldn't ask that depending on how broken they were by the experience.
Yeah. Well, I think, and that's the main thing. I think, when you go into building a company and trying to do your own startup, I think for me and for my team, we went into it, yes, because like everyone, you want a successful financial outcome at the end. But more than anything, we wanted to go through that journey together, right? And so it was about trying to build something of our own, right? Take something that was just an idea in our heads and turning it into a product that someone would use, that someone would pay for. And, for us, it was a 2.5 year journey of, not only learning a ton professionally, but also learning just a ton about ourselves. And so, by the end, sure, that one finite outcome of, yes or no in terms of successful financial exit was obviously a no. But, whether or not you want to call that a failure, we learned a ton and we had so much fun building that thing together. And like I said, going through that journey, and the journey was very much the reward for us.
Right.
And that's the thing, that regardless of how your startup ends, going through it is something that no one can ever take away from you. And I think that's the main thing that I learned. And I think part of too going through that process of what I realized was like, what you like for us, like the startup thing, like there's no day that ever felt like work. Like there's no such thing as like the end of the work week or the start of the work week. Like every day was just a day, and it all just felt like fun and like play, right?
Right.
Some days, meant that I had my kids because daycare was closed, and that happened to be Saturday and Sunday.
Right.
Others days they were gone, and so I could get some work done, and we had a lot of fun with the team. And I think that was the thing that that really I've never had before in my career, was like just a sense of like, really having fun day in and day out, and kind of finding my passion, which was trying to build companies, build products, build teams, build solutions in the technology space. And so yeah, the outpouring of support was great when I announced on LinkedIn kind of what was going on. Had tons of people reach out, with opportunities, just being able to like lend a hand, like grab coffee, all those things. And so yeah, in the process right now of kind of finalizing what it is that I do next. It'll be in the startup space again. It'll be on the technology side. And hopefully I think I should be able to announce that at some point over the next couple weeks.
Very cool. That's great. And I love the way that you frame that entire experience. It's been my experience in my current job with experts.com and in some side work that I do. The learning aspect, like you said, 2.5 years, what you can learn in 2.5 years of trying to build something is really incredible, right? And now you're out on your own. You don't have somebody else to go to and ask this question. There's a lot of people you can ask questions of, but advisors and friends and things like that. But you're really kind of doing it on your own and learning it as you go. So I mean, that's fantastic that you've. I really appreciate the way that you've shared this. It reminds me of the other legal tech company who come on the show and shared this with us. He had very similar outlook. He had not crushed. He had been through this many times before. He knew how much more money it was going to take before they can get to a reasonable place where they could actually start selling. And he just didn't think it was. And he came with this experience, that hey, look, these things don't always work out, and this is why. And he kind of bullet pointed it for people. So
for sure.
And I appreciate that you've done that as well. Will you go back into legal tech?
Probably not for the next one.
Okay.
I'm not gonna rule it out in the future. But I'm not gung-ho to do my next thing there either. But there are a lot of problems that exist, not only within legal, but within a lot of other B2B industries.
Yeah.
And so if eventually someday I come across another problem that just happens to be for attorneys, maybe a problem that I see my wife having, then I will definitely take a close, hard look at it. That's for sure.
That's cool. Yeah, and look, legal tech is still, we're just now getting some attention in the space, even from investors. But other industries such as fintech have really skyrocketed, and then martech and insurtech and all the there's a lot of action out there in the B2B space. So and even B2C in many of those. We're watching Robinhood take off right now in the fintech space. So any last thoughts that you can share with the audience before I let you go and go spend some time with the family?
Yeah, no, I think the only other thing that I'll say is that if any, for me, before I started TALI, it was always one of those things where I was like, oh, like starting a company would be fun, but like, how do you do that? Like, I think you've got to be you've either got to be like rich going into it, or you've got to be some like super smart engineer. I was none of those things. I think the main thing with starting any company is that you just need to get comfortable with that idea of failing, being told no, and just push through those things. And like that's the hardest part, and that's what separates people who start companies from people who don't. And that it's hard, but it's so much fun. And so to anyone that I think wants to start a company, anyone that just has an idea that they think could be big enough to turn into a business, like just go out, start running it by people, sharing it, getting thoughts, getting feedback. Like that's how we got started, was just talking. And that's essentially free. Like that's not going to cost you anything except your time. So go out, give it a try, and see if you can do it. But you don't need to have, like, that's the thing. Like you don't need to have any super special like skills beyond just determination and kind of drive to push through those things. Like I said, I'm just a former accountant, who grew up in small town Wisconsin and has no idea how to code. I managed to start a company, have a lot of fun doing it. And I think that's the thing that I'll leave folks with is like, go out and give it a try. I can guarantee you it will be worth the adventure.
And it sounds like, in addition to that, it's given you the bug to go continue down the startup road.
Yep,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah,
Excellent.
You'll find your passion.
Excellent. Well, Matt, thank you so much for being on the show tonight. I'll let you get back to family and friends.
Yeah.
Don't disappear right away after we stop, but can you tell our listeners where to find you now that it won't necessarily at the TALI website, right?
Yeah. Yep. So TALI website will be live through the end of June. So telltali.com, telltali.com. And you can, anyone out there that wants to reach out can find me on LinkedIn. Just search for Matthew Volm. Or you can send me an email. My email address is mkvolm, that's M as in Matt, K as in Ken, and then V as in Victor, OLM @gmail.com. And I'm open to anyone that wants to get together. And you can find me on Twitter at HeyMPV is my handle. I'm always open and up to connecting with anyone that wants to chat.
Excellent. Thanks again, Matt, for being here. And for our replay viewers, thank you for tuning in. And we will see you next week for episode 52. So stay tuned for that. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.